It was an ordinary Tuesday, the kind where life felt so peaceful that a part of me almost felt guilty. The sun streamed gently through the branches lining Maplewood Lane, casting soft, broken shadows over the lush front garden I had cultivated with care over the years. A green escape in the middle of suburban order as a civil rights attorney. My daily grind usually involved complex legal battles, exhausting negotiations, and standing between those seeking justice and the systems built to deny them. But today, I was looking forward to nothing more than a quiet evening with my thoughts, a cup of strong coffee, and maybe an old detective novel. I settled into my worn leather armchair, the one that had molded perfectly to the contours of my frame after countless evenings of refuge. Just as I was about to lose myself in the moment, my phone buzzed relentlessly against the stack of legal briefs strewn on the coffee table. A message from my best friend, Marcus Hayes, flashed on the screen. "Ready for tonight's HOA circus?" I groaned aloud. Tonight was the monthly Homeowners Association meeting, an event that was supposed to ensure community harmony but had, under one woman's leadership, become a dramatic affair. Rebecca Sullivan, our self-appointed guardian of community standards, would undoubtedly make another grand performance. She had elevated passive-aggressive complaining into an art form, and if there were medals for theatrical outrage, she would have claimed gold, silver, and bronze simultaneously. I sighed, staring up at the ceiling. Rebecca's vision of neighborhood perfection involved policing everyone's property to the last blade of grass. Her zeal, though cloaked under the guise of preserving property values, had long crossed into tyranny. My inner monologue was interrupted by an aggressive knock at the door, loud, insistent, and predictably rude. I pulled myself out of the armchair and peered through the peephole. There she was, Rebecca, arms flailing, lips pursed into an angry line, her posture rigid with self-importance. Taking a breath to fortify my patience, I opened the door. "Mr. Carter, we need to talk," she barked, pointing a perfectly manicured finger directly at my face with the energy of a referee calling a foul. "Rebecca, good evening to you too," I said smoothly, folding my arms across my chest. "What brings you by unannounced?" A sudden outbreak of common sense. She ignored the jab, her voice growing louder. "I'm calling my lawyer. You need to vacate your home immediately." I blinked, uncomprehending. "I beg your pardon. My son, Nathan, and his family need this house. It's bigger, and it's better for raising children. You are squatting on property that should belong to them," she declared with astonishing seriousness. "Squatting on my own property." The absurdity was so staggering that I actually laughed. "Rebecca, I have a deed, a mortgage I pay religiously, and taxes that could fund a small library. What exactly gives you the impression you have any claim over my home?" "My son deserves better," she snapped, her eyes blazing. "He just returned from humanitarian work abroad. He shouldn't have to settle for anything less than the best." "Humanitarian work?" I said, raising an eyebrow. "Wasn't he on a 2-month luxury yacht cruise around the Mediterranean?" Rebecca waved a dismissive hand. "Details. The point is, family needs come first." I shook my head in disbelief. "Family doesn't entitle you to real estate, Rebecca. This is America, not a medieval kingdom." Without another word, she spun on her heel and marched down the steps toward her husband, Leonard, who stood awkwardly by the curb, looking like he'd much rather be anywhere else. The door clicked shut behind her. I leaned against it and laughed until my sides hurt. This was next-level entitlement, even by Rebecca's standards. Later that evening, at the community center, the familiar circus of suburban politics was already in full swing. Residents filled the seats, chatting and exchanging pleasantries. But as I entered, a ripple of energy swept the room. Rebecca was already there, perched like a hawk at the head of the table, wearing a flaming red jacket that seemed to scream, "Look at me." The meeting began with the usual pleasantries, but soon Rebecca seized the floor. "We must preserve our community standards," she proclaimed with great drama. "And that includes ensuring that homes are properly allocated to families in need." There it was, the opening volley. I stood slowly when the floor was opened for comments. fixing my gaze calmly on the assembled crowd. "Good evening, neighbors," I said, my voice steady. "While I applaud our community's commitment to maintaining excellence, I must clarify an important legal matter. No one has the right to demand another resident vacate their property simply to suit personal preferences." Rebecca leapt to her feet. "You are jeopardizing the spirit of community, Elijah. Nathan needs that home more than you do." I smiled tightly. "Rebecca, unless you're planning to invoke feudal law, there is no spirit clause that overrides property ownership." Laughter broke out across the room, some muffled behind hands, others more brazen. "You can mock all you like," Rebecca said, her cheeks flushed. "But my lawyer will be in touch." "Please do," I replied sweetly. "I'd be delighted to discuss property rights at greater length." As the meeting dissolved into murmurs and chuckles, I slipped out, satisfied. Rebecca was making a fool of herself, and she didn't even realize it. The next morning, a heavy envelope arrived at my doorstep. Rebecca had made good on her threat. Her lawyer had sent a formal demand that I vacate my home within 30 days for the greater good of the community. I couldn't help but grin that I called my own attorney, Vanessa Reed, a ferocious legal mind with a smile as sharp as a blade. "Vanessa," I said, handing her the letter, "I believe we have an opportunity for some fun." She read it once, twice, and laughed. "This is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen. Can we make an example of her?" I asked. "Oh, absolutely," Vanessa said, already pulling out a notepad. "We'll counter this so hard it'll leave a crater." What followed was a series of increasingly absurd legal skirmishes. Rebecca's lawyer, an aging man with more bravado than sense, tried every trick he could think of, none of them remotely effective. Court day arrived under a heavy sky. I sat calmly, Vanessa at my side, while Rebecca huddled with her attorney, whispering furiously. "Your Honor," Rebecca's lawyer began, "this is not about legality. It is about morality and the welfare of the community." The judge, a stern woman with a no-nonsense expression, leaned forward. "Sir, this court deals in law, not morality plays. Proceed." With each passing moment, it became clearer that Rebecca's case had more holes than Swiss cheese. When it was my turn, Vanessa rose with the confidence of a gladiator entering the arena. "Your Honor, my client legally owns his property, has maintained it to the highest standards, and has never breached any community regulations. Ms. Sullivan's demands are not only baseless, but dangerously close to harassment." Rebecca's face grew redder with every word that in the end, the judge dismissed the case with a sharp rebuke. "This court will not entertain personal vendettas disguised as legal claims. Ms. Sullivan, you are ordered to cease all harassment of Mr. Carter effective immediately." I thanked the judge and walked out of that courtroom feeling lighter than air. Back in the neighborhood, news traveled fast. Rebecca's humiliation was the talk of every backyard barbecue and coffee klatch. Her reputation, once fierce and intimidating, now carried the sour stink of defeat. Yet somehow, Rebecca refused to learn. She lurked near her windows, glared from across the street, and continued muttering about injustice. But she no longer had the power to do anything. And me? I spent the summer planting new roses, enjoying endless cups of coffee on my porch, and sharing knowing smiles with neighbors who, thanks to Rebecca, had grown closer through shared laughter and solidarity that in the end, Glenwood Clare wasn't just a collection of houses. It was a community, one that had stood together against absurdity and come out stronger. And every time I saw Rebecca storming past, muttering about her latest imaginary grievance, I couldn't help but smile. Victory had never smelled sweeter, and home had never felt more like home.